Hey everyone, so this is Elementary Season 5, Episode 8, called How the Sausage is Made. So basically, the episode starts off with a man named Holder coming by the house to drop off something for Sherlock, to because he hasn't paid what he's owed to Sherlock in a while, so he's dropping off a crown, or what looks like a crown, to Sherlock so that he would be considered payment for all the late payments or whatever. And he lets slip that Sherlock hasn't been to a meeting in at least a couple months, or a couple weeks, and at least a couple weeks, if not a couple months. Then at the ME's office, we see Sherlock and Joan meet with the ME, Eugene, I think his name is, and this guy named Ephraim Albright, who appeared to have died from electric reaction the previous night, has died because of eating someone else, basically, like eating human remains in a sausage. Sherlock ends up smelling the sausage. Like the way he looked, trying to suppress his gag reflex, was everything. I was like, yes. I don't know why I got that. Anyway, so he deduces that there's this herb named anise that a specific butcher uses when he makes his sausages and stuff. When Sherlock and Joan go to question him, he says that he didn't put human remains in his sausages, but there was a break-in the week before, and everything. So a little later, as Sherlock is looking around, Joan tries to approach the subject of him lying about what he goes, about him not going to his meetings anymore, but he deflects before she can actually bring it up. Sherlock then finds a hair belonging to someone who appears to be albino, but the next morning we come to find out from Sherlock that the person who was killed wasn't albino. He just had a genetic condition where there's this white streak in your hair when you are born, and he had it. So Sherlock then tells Joan to go off by themselves, as he goes to a meeting at St. Olaf where he hasn't been for months. Joan then follows him, but then gets a text from Marcus telling her they found a nurse who was working at View Hospital named Alma Cabrera, who was in the video with the guy who had the white streak in his hair. Joan had followed Sherlock to a park where he was playing the violin with other people. Anyway, once there, at Alma's place, who happens to be a nurse on the oncology department. I don't know why that was relevant. I mean, she's a nurse, so what? Or she's a nurse on the oncology department, so what? So Marcus and Joan, question her, and she says the guy's name is Joaquin, who was a biotechnologist, and they finally got him, whatever that's supposed to mean. At Next Century Meet, Marcus and Sherlock question Warner Plots, who is the CEO of the company, and while there, Sherlock notices a woman named Corinne who walked upstairs rather than use the elevator. Moore gets her resume, calls her references, and figures out that the numbers she used for them are out of service. Corinne then reveals that she was placed up at Midwest cattle ranchers to get dirt on the company. Sherlock then tells Joan that he asked the hacker group called everyone to decrypt some files for him from Midwest cattle ranchers. And Joan then reveals that Holder came over to the previous day. Sherlock tells her that his mind doesn't do well in stagnation, and that's why he hasn't been to a meeting in a couple months. And he needs to engage in daring things to stay sober, but Joan disagrees. And I'm inclined to agree with Joan here. So the next morning, Sherlock has gotten information from everyone, and they find out that Midwest cattle ranchers paid $100,000 to perform someone in the position of a performance consultant by the name of Thomas Coburn. Thomas has attracted the notice of both local and federal authorities in multiple jurisdictions over the last 6 years in connection to 8 other murders, where the corporations paid him to be this performance consultant when the company wanted the people killed for, I guess, uncovering something. So you would call him a hitman, I guess. Thomas has a daughter named Grace, who on paper looks like they haven't been on speaking terms and estranged, basically, after Thomas and her mother had divorced. But Sherlock thinks Grace and Thomas are much closer than they appear, because she has been in each city at the exact same time that these people have been killed. So he's thinking that they're committing the murders together. So, and she happens to live in New York City, by the way. Anyway, at the station, Marcus and Sherlock tell Grace that they know about her and her father killing people as a duo. But she claims that she and her father didn't kill Joaquin, even though they were contracted to kill him by Midwest cattle ranchers. She claims they cut off the job before they could finish it, because an FDA ruling had come out stating that Next Century Meats was using meat substitute instead of recognizing it as real meat, making the meat to be labeled as tofu and therefore or labeled in a way that would put it in the tofu aisle. So Gregson walks in on Marcus trying to come up with other suspects, and Marcus tells Gregson that Sherlock texted him saying that no certified genius like Joaquin would knowingly submit flawed work. So Marcus is looking through the documents of his undoctored files. Marcus also reveals that the FDA ruled that if 2 products are genetically identical, but one came from a live cow and one was manufactured within a lab, they're basically the same thing. So when looking through the Joaquin's undoctored files and the ones that were submitted to the FDA, Marcus notices a couple of numbers are different and texts Sherlock. Sherlock then, texts them immediately to come over right away. At Next Century Meats, they question Brendan Farley. He denies having killed Joaquin, though, naturally, saying that fudging his numbers doesn't necessarily mean that he must have killed. That was why he was killed. And Farley gives an alibi. He was at a wedding the entire time, and he was hitting on the bridesmaids, basically. Turns out, turns out that Farley's alibi checks out. And then later, Jones tells Sherlock that the reason he stopped going to meetings is because he stopped saying what's on his mind, even if it is you know, that he's the smartest person in the room, or the most clever, and that's why he's bored, or the fact that he's just bored in meetings. He just stopped, you know, saying all this in his meetings, and that's why he stopped going to them in the first place. Anyway, next morning, Joan wakes up to find scholars in the living room, or leading scholars in their faiths, which is the Muslim and Jewish faith, talking about the respective foods they can't eat due to their faiths. Sherlock, in the kitchen, Sherlock tells her, or wonders to her, why anyone would doctor research to prevent a lucrative breakthrough from being labeled as such, and he thinks it's because it would be more profitable labeling it differently. He goes on to say someone is trying to label it Parav, or I am not sure if I'm pronouncing that right, but it's basically meaning a Jewish word, basically meaning that it's neither dairy nor meat. So they can eat it because obviously cutting meat in a certain way prevents Jewish people from eating it, or cutting it from a certain part of the animal prevents them from eating it. So if it's not dairy or meat, then and labeled as such, they can eat it. Same thing goes with being a Muslim. So labeling it labeling it that as not meat or dairy would allow Muslims to be able to eat pork, and Jewish people to be able to eat cheeseburgers, and so they figured that if Joaquin wasn't willing to doctor his findings, then whoever was in charge there would want to kill him, aka Warner Plots, because that would prevent him from making more money within these two religious communities. But once they bring Farley in to show that they know about all this, he still wouldn't budge to turn over Warner. Sherlock and Jones then have the leaders of the Jewish and Muslim community to stand together and not allow the Shemeat, that's Sherlock keeps naming it. They won't allow the Shemeat to be labeled as kosher or halal, so next century meats wouldn't be able to sell it to either communities. And then they offer a deal to Farley and Warner. Either one of them gets convicted of murdering Joaquin and therefore will allow, and then the communities will allow the products to be named kosher and or halal, or they won't allow it to be deemed as such, and eventually Farley agrees to testify against Warner. And Sherlock is seen going to a meeting and opening up about basically what he feels in regards to his meetings and how he feels about them now. It's basically the entire episode, and I really liked it. I'm glad they kind of, you know, touched on on the Jewish community a little bit, even if they didn't go too in depth about it. I mean, because I know it's only like 45 minutes, they can only feasibly talk about this community and so much. So, yeah, I mean, I'm glad that they're at least, you know, kind of shedding light on these communities and what they believe, at least a little bit. But that's just me. Anyway, this wasn't really that spectacular, and I'm other than the fact that Sherlock hasn't been going to meetings. I'm glad he's finally at least admitting to the fact that he's finally at least admitting to the fact that he is having trouble um, staying and going to meetings, and why that is. I mean, at least shows that he's growing as a person and everything, and at least acknowledging, I guess one would call it shortcomings, but I don't really want to necessarily say that, because it's not shortcomings if he's actually admitting to them and trying to at least improve it. So, no episode this coming Sunday, so we're off for 2 weeks. But I think there's an episode of Rosewood this week. If not, then that's fine too. But Vikings comes on Wednesday night, so hopefully I'll be able to make a video Thursday. Who knows? With that said, I will see you guys in 2 weeks on Elementary, and Thursday morning, or not Thursday morning, Thursday afternoon / evening, for a Viking recap and review. See you guys then. Bye.